that men are like, but he's like sympathetic to men's plights. And he's like,
was she? I have headphones. Also, this is not
At the least.
At the least.
Body count?
Here?
I'm saying 3 or 4.
You think this debate is going to get that crazy?
Oh, this one right
you
here?
You think this debate is going to get that crazy?
Not that violent.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan.
Dude, what are you doing, man? Are you crazy?
Come around.
Research that you have to do on viruses to see how they mutate. It's part of it's how we can get ahead of like flu season viruses to know which vaccines to make. The idea that we just ban some forms of research, I don't understand it. I don't think it. The amount of people getting sick fell. So of course a higher percentage is going to be spread.
Most of these policies only worked if they were followed properly, much like the mask mandate all over the world. Lockdown happens, it's spreading anyways, because humans need connection.
What you just
they need
said
to go to work,
true?
they need to do all of these things that were taken away from us for years.
In every single state where lockdowns were mandated, the spread decreases.
And then
but like conservatives lose their mind,
as soon as they had to open up because people needed to go to work, people needed to see their families, everyone just got it again.
Sure, and the goal is to
you know what probably would have been a lot easier to rip that Band-Aid off early.
That's easy for you to say because you don't spend time working inside a hospital or you don't have families that are getting sick from other things. Our entire hospital system has been stressed. It was before the coronavirus.
Do you work in a hospital?
I'm in the middle of talking. Holy shit.
Okay,
the entire hospital system was stressed for before we even got to the coronavirus pandemic. And if you talk to any medical professional for the past 2 years, it's been hell. People are being shipped in from Canada to work as traveling nurses.
I disagree with that.
There's been a huge burden on the system. The idea that we could have we'll just do it all at once and have a huge hump of people when we already had over 1 million people die from the disease, I don't think is an effective way or an appropriate way to manage public health.
It's close to 1 million. I looked it up. It's 990,000.
The official number is higher than that.
Really?
It is over 1 million.
I just looked it up.
But also that number is probably an underreport, is what most people agree.
The CDC said, I think the CDC said that there was over-reporting in some cases.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Who was it who was saying that recently? Because I read some reports
I don't know
on
who you watch for media, but the CDC absolutely, nobody has said that there's been an over-reporting of deaths.
Steve, do you think that the COVID containment discussion has disappeared from media? Because I think a lot of people do. And if you think it has disappeared, why do you think that is?
Do you know what killed COVID?
Is it? She's going to say Ukraine.
Yeah. War in Ukraine. It took it right off my TV set.
Well, it's also the midterms this year. Let's not forget that, too.
It's sort of interesting. I think that these conversations, I think we do miss the point. Like, obviously, COVID had a major health impact on the United States and the world. Obviously, it sucked and it was bad for a lot of people. I got COVID. It was very unpleasant. I had to miss this event in November. I didn't die, obviously. I'm still here. But I think that the real issue is the amount of oppression that we got from the government. I think the clampdown on our rights was a problem. I think that we let that happen without a lot of pushback was a problem. And I think when it turned out that questioning the going narrative would get you, people got fired or people got banned from social media. Media outlets wouldn't allow that stuff to be covered. Google suppressed it. I remember that from the post-millennial. We had, we would run stories of somebody questioning the narrative, and that would get suppressed, and it was a big problem, fact-checked, all of those sorts of things. So the real issue, yes, COVID was a big problem. Yes, the lockdowns were a big problem. To me, the biggest problem was the oppressive nature of government control.
The intelligent and interesting conversation that needs to happen is we have to figure out what is an appropriate response given the likely damage of a particular virus. And I think that hopefully when we go back and look at everything, we're going to find that some things probably worked pretty well, and we're going to find that some things were probably incredibly stupid and didn't work well. This is the conversation that I wish we could have, but instead, we're having conversations about experimental vaccines and the Wuhan lab gain-of-function Fauci research leak, and it's all of just this highly irrelevant stuff. Most of it is highly untrue, to be kind, and it diverts the conversation away from I think the interesting stuff that we could be talking about. Was there an appropriate amount of stimulus? Which lockdown measures were effective? Which weren't? And I think these are the conversations I wish we were having instead.
Wanting to have these oh, let's talk about the interesting data and stats here, and there's a lot of emotion on this. I mean, women, right? So there's a lot of emotion on this side of the conversation, but also because we go outside. You spend 90% of your time inside playing video games on your computer. You don't really travel.
Are literally
you're not that affected by COVID policy.
Okay, so number one, you're wrong, okay?
I know for a fact.
Number one,
I log in any time of the day. Oh, Destiny's live, playing Elden Ring, playing League of Legends.
So I was actually separated from my fiance for 10 months. I could not see her because of coronavirus lockdown policy. Probably the hardest
you're
part of
playing video
relationship,
games the whole time anyways.
Well, sometimes people like to do other things too, believe it or not, Lauren, okay? So yes, it did affect me. It had a huge effect on me.
That gave you more time to play League. You were like sick.
Was she in a different country?
We were just talking about how hard it was to be separated from friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and he just said that he was separated from his fiance for 10 months.
I'm saying it gives him more time to play video games. So
right, but
she's doing an ad hominem personal
pretending
attack
to be emotional
against me.
for the
Okay,
debate.
I want the moderator.
Don't let him humanize himself.
I want the moderator to turn this down. Okay.
We're all humans.
It was pretty funny as a joke, but
I feel personally attacked.
Okay, we're. I do want to ask a question though about something you said. You said it's irrelevant. Do you not to go back and beat a dead horse, but I guess I didn't realize this at the beginning. You think it's irrelevant for us to definitively find out where the virus originated, or you think it's impossible to find out?
I think it's probably impossible, and then I don't know how relevant it would be if we found out one way or another. I don't know what that changes going forward in the future. Like hypothetically, like ultra worst case scenario, say like China manufactured the virus and it got out of control and it they were trying to mess with us. What are we doing about it at this point? I mean, I guess it would be good to know, but I don't know like what policy actions we take in the future based on like the organization.
There could be trade policy changes based on that for sure.
But are there, right? I mean,
No,
you've got like
there
all
could
of Europe
be.
right
There
now is
could be.
talking about how evil Russia is.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're heating their homes with Russian gas that they don't want to get rid of, right? Is the United States really about to start sanctioning, China?
I think we only just stopped importing because we had futures. I think we only just stopped importing Russian
Destiny, and if I could
Russian
ask you
oil.
a question too. So
Am I going to be allowed to answer or? Okay, then go ahead. Yeah.
all right. So I think, just from my own opinion, and feel free, of course, to respond to this one, that the reason why it's important for us to figure out where this comes from is, for example, let's say that Dr. Fauci's National Institute of Infectious Diseases, did fund gain-of-function research, and then the same Dr. Fauci was allowed to lead the entire public policy that was pushing vaccination on the public, that was, basically hiding the fact that Dr. Fauci, because this is what a lot of these conspiracy theorists on the right would say, right? That Dr. Fauci funded this virus, that it got released, and then Dr. Fauci, who was making money off the same vaccines that were supposed to be saving us from the virus, was allowed to, be able to lead that public policy. So I'm not finished with my question yet. My question would be, if that was something that did happen, don't you think that would kind of be important to know, and like moving forward, maybe for the direction of our country, not let people be allowed to do that in our government?
My understanding is I don't think Dr. Fauci unilaterally controls the budget of his department. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe he's literally the only one that does that. I would be surprised if that was the case, number one. Number two, I don't think Fauci has made a ton of money off of the vaccine.
Do you think that Fauci or any political leaders will ever be held accountable for their role in the COVID response?
What is accountability? Like, this is the issue, is that like we have a virus that was more transmissive than any virus in the history of all of mankind. This is like the biggest like worldwide like spread of a virus we've ever seen, ever. So in terms of like, is somebody going to be held accountable for messing up? Like, I mean, I don't even know if people knew what we were supposed to do, right?
We didn't have like intentionally funded, like genetically modifying this virus to infect humans easier, don't you think that that should be something you should be held accountable for? I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying hypothetically.
Do you want to stop all gain-of-function research?
No, I don't think so, but I think that if you funded that and you had bad intentions behind it, don't you think that you should be held accountable?
If that was the case, yeah, of course. If Fauci is twirling his mustache behind the scenes trying to engineer a virus to destroy the world in order to get rich off of vaccines, yeah, that would probably be something worth looking into. When I see evidence of that, I'll be more interested in that.
How are we going to see evidence if we don't investigate any of this?
I'm pretty sure if anybody in Congress wanted to open an investigation, or we have the wonderful independent journalists from places like
Paul,
Project
who was censored
Veritas
off of YouTube after trying to push Fauci on this specific issue.
Is YouTube the only place where investigative journalism can happen?
No,
is that really where we're at today?
We are silencing people that are trying to push back and expose this, aka Rand Paul, who was pushing back against Dr. Fauci.
Rand Paul is literally in Congress. I don't think he's been silenced. He has his little moments in his hearings. He gets mainstream media coverage from everybody when he's asking his little questions. It seems like he's doing okay. I don't know how his YouTube channel is doing, but it seems like he's been able to ask the questions that he wants to ask.
You keep pointing on the YouTube side, but what I'm pointing to is the fact that that's public information that we should all have access to, correct?
Which? If Fauci was engineering viruses?
just even that information. Don't you feel like we should have freedom of information to even access that conversation between Dr. Fauci and Rand Paul?
If you want. I mean, you can file a FOIA request and see if you can get it declassified or
Okay,
whatever
so
you
if you're
want.
an average American citizen who has no idea what a FOIA request is because you didn't go to school for journalism, go ahead and do that if you want access to the information about corruption in this country.
I don't know what the point of that question was. There are journalists that can file FOIA requests if you want to. I'm not saying that the average American should be the one in charge of doing these investigations.
But
That's the
I'm
whole reason why we
pointing
have
out that
investigative
that's
journalists,
why
right?
it's so bad that we have censorship right on YouTube, because it gives the average American the ability to access this information that they otherwise would have had to, a journalist would have had to go through a FOIA request to get. I don't understand why you're arguing for the government to be able to cover things up right now.
I'm not arguing for the government to be able to cover things up. You're arguing about a cover-up of a thing that I don't think ever even happened. I don't think there's any evidence pointing towards it happening. So we're like in two different worlds of what we're talking about right now in terms of...
But that's what I'm saying. It's like there was even a conversation about that, right? But you can't even access that conversation. The average American person, if they're interested in that, if they're interested in, hey, maybe I do want to become an investigative reporter, where would I start on this? You can't even have the access to information on how this discussion started.
I don't know what the rationale was for, there are certain meetings that are closed-door meetings that are inaccessible to the public for matters of national security, for matters of stuff going on within Congress. I don't know why this particular conversation was classified. If you don't think it should have been, then you file a FOIA request, and that's the process that we go through. But the alternative, we don't just have every single conversation open to the public. That's just not how our government works.
So it sounds like you answered my question earlier. You don't think the government has a right to enforce lockdowns for any reason. You think they do. I'm not sure about you ladies, where you fall on that.
I did not think that they were appropriate measures, and my specific concerns with the lockdowns were the closure of small businesses and the closure of schools, which any parent knows was not only devastating for children in terms of their learning, but they lost a lot of learning, they lost a lot of socialization, and I'm pretty sure there was anecdotal evidence will suggest that there was an increase in childhood obesity due to the pandemic, because we couldn't go out and go to the playgrounds, we couldn't go play, we couldn't do a lot of things, and it was extremely frustrating for my son in particular. Honestly, if it weren't for video games and being able to play online with his friends, it would have been even more devastating.
Absolutely based. True.
So I want to ask a question.
That is true. That is how that worked out. But when I talked to his pediatrician eventually, the pediatrician said that pretty much every kid that had been seen at that office had gained an extra 10 to 20 pounds that they probably wouldn't have had they been in PE 3 times a week, walking back and forth to school, going to the park to play with their friends, all of that kind of stuff. So that was pretty devastating. I think a lot of us probably experienced pandemic weight gain. It was sad.
So given your opinions on the government enforcing lockdowns, what do you think about government-enforced vaccines?
I'm not in favor of government enforcing very much, frankly. I wasn't in favor of government enforcement of vaccines and limiting people's movement based on whether or not they had taken those vaccines, especially once vaccines had been made available to everyone. Once everyone had access to vaccines and it had been a few months, it did not seem reasonable to restrict the movements of people who had chosen not to get vaccinated. I got COVID while I was vaccinated, and I went and I got monoclonal antibodies and I did the whole thing. I was like, I want to see what this is about. But yeah, I don't think that it was appropriate to
Und
have
schreibst
that
du,
kind of
willst esse gehe und willst eigentlich trinke gehe?
Ja, man kann es ja kombinieren. Erst essen und dann...
Your inhibitor has been destroyed.
So, Johannes. Ich bin jetzt an Twitter aktiv zu nutzen.
Ja.
Jetzt, wo Elon Twitter hat.
Nö, ich hab schon vorher.
Double kill. inhibitor is respawning soon.
We Demacians are no easy prey.
Executed.
Cool.
An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain. Rampage.
That's what you get for trying.
Ally has been slain. Shut down.
Demacia is counting. Find me some time.
The enemy's inhibitor is respawning soon.
Stick to the plan, Val.
An enemy has been slain. Double kill. Double kill. Aced. Your team has destroyed an inhibitor. Victory!
Government enforcement. Now, if you look back in the 20th century, we did have enforced polio vaccines. I don't think that anybody's movement was restricted if they didn't get the polio vaccine. I'm not sure. But that was a far more dangerous disease. We even had a president who got it and was then paralyzed because of it. And if you look back at the control of viruses, it's interesting. There were leper colonies, people with plague were isolated, and there's definitely a question to be asked as to how to control diseases. I don't think we did a great job with this one, and I think a lot of why we didn't do a great job with this one is because the first answers that were come up with by the government were just assumed to be correct and then enforced. There wasn't a lot of public conversation about it, and a lot of our rights were just totally squashed. Therefore, next time it's going to be even easier to take our rights away, I think.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think there have been and there probably will be instances in the future where government power, or at least some sort of organized community power to do massive things, lockdown, everyone has to stay inside, everyone has to get some sort of medical treatment. I think that has existed in history and it will exist in the future. But when it comes to COVID, I don't think that is one of those crises. And you know how you can tell? Because every other time the government has said, hey, get in your homes, do this, do that, when it's been bombs dropping, people do it. There's not a debate. No one's sitting around like, I don't know, maybe. I haven't seen anyone die from it. No, they're like, holy shit, there's bombs dropping from the sky. Let's go do this. Or you're seeing mass deaths or something. COVID just was not that experience for many of us. I still don't know anyone personally who has died from COVID. I don't. It is still so controversial with the average person that I don't think the government really have the authority to be telling us what to put in our bodies, to be telling us where we can and can't go. And what I think happened there, because I still don't think they have the popular support or did at any point for what they did, is the tail was wagging the dog with the media. The media were telling politicians and the public what they need to be afraid of, what they need to panic about, what they need to do. And we know this because at the very beginning of COVID, even when it was spreading, the media were saying, don't worry about it. And everyone was like, oh, okay. And then suddenly, freak out. Everyone starts panicking. And politicians didn't want to get bad press. So they just started doing what the media told them to do. I think this was massively a tail wagging the dog situation.
What country do you guys think had the best response? And we're probably going to have different answers here, but the best response and maybe the worst response, if you have an opinion on that.
Every third world country. We got work to do. What? Disease? Sorry. I'm going to starve to death. I got to go do something.
You're saying they had the best response?
Kind of, no. I would have preferred to live there. I'd say the lockdown, personally for me, the lockdown messed up my life way more than anything to do with the disease ever did. But I can understand people that are like, I want some policy, especially elderly homes, that kind of stuff. The best response would have been Band-Aid response, but you lock down vulnerable populations. And everyone else who's not vulnerable gets to go out and about, in my opinion. I don't know if anyone did that specifically. I'd have to look into it more.
Some of that was done in Scandinavian countries. Yeah. And I think the countries that did not close schools probably, I mean, I'm a parent, so that's my thing, but I think the countries that did not close schools probably did the best response. I think Sweden actually was one of those that tried to protect the vulnerable while letting everybody else do what they wanted, and also didn't close schools. They did, I think, for a short period of time, but then got them open pretty fast. I think that's probably the better response, protecting the vulnerable, letting kids go about their lives, especially since they did not have high instances of mortality due to this disease.
Go ahead.
The government stripping away people's rights doesn't sit well with me, so I'm going to say that no country that did that handled this well. And in regards to which country handled it worse, I mean, look at what was happening in Australia, in New Zealand. Look what was happening to people in Canada. Okay, you had people that were protesting the lockdowns that got thrown in jail. I mean,
their bank accounts frozen?
Their bank accounts frozen, exactly. You had people in China whose cats are being thrown in bags right now for COVID protection. So, there were a majority of countries that handled this extremely poorly. Here in America, again, too. Yeah, exactly. Again, in America, too, we're arresting people that are walking outside alone on the beach.
What about Florida? Is Florida a country? They did a good job.
If Florida was a country, they probably handled it the best, I guess. I don't know. Ron DeSantis still what was the word I was looking for? Yeah, shut them down for, a small period of time. And, I am very right-wing, but even with Donald Trump, I don't even agree with his Operation Warp Speed and the fact that he pushed that on people and that we were looking for vaccination to be the point of, how we get out of this when it has been so ineffective. But again, look at our Health Secretary of America right now. It's a man pretending to be a woman, just, so we're all aware of where basic science is in America in the modern day.
The vaccine has been highly effective. Thank you. I think South Korea probably did the best. It was an incredibly dense country. They really, really aggressively did the contact tracing stuff. I don't think their shutdowns were as harsh as New Zealand or Australia, but I haven't read about them recently. But it seemed like in terms of numbers and in terms of comparable countries to like really highly dense country and having very, very low infection rates, it feels like South Korea probably did the best.
How do you guys think that celebrities held up under this pandemic? This is a question we might have some agreement on.
Truly the most Hollywood celebrities.
Sorry.
I was just quoting The Simpsons. Sorry.
There's a joke question. How do you think celebrities, think of the celebrities, how
do you
they
remember
do?
when they all sang Imagine remotely?
COVID was actually
from their
cured
beautiful,
after that.
From their beautiful locations.
Yeah,
I was just
that's
like,
why COVID
fuck off.
stopped, because
Like,
the celebrities
I'm
sang
in a
to us.
one-bedroom apartment. Like, shut up. That made me so annoyed.
I do have one final serious question before, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. When the history is written about these past 2 COVID years, what story do you think they're going to tell, and what story do you think they should tell? And I'll start with you, Destiny.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. I think that if I had to guess, I think probably the biggest thing that is going to be followed is going to be the educational gaps. I think they've already talked about seeing, like, you're going to see going through the years, like, longitudinally kids that were locked out of school for 2 years weren't able to be educated. And they're going to be, like, either IQ drops or lack of educational attainment or job problems. I think that's going to be something you'll see for sure. And then secondly, probably would be that the economic measures were too aggressive for the stimulus given. That needed to be balanced out better. I think that the story of the United States is probably that there was no coherent top-down approach for dealing with everything. I think if there would have been a coherent approach, even if you're for or against lockdowns or whatever, I think we all would have been happier for it. If you're going to shut down a lot of businesses, like, there has to be appropriate compensation. Not everybody can just hole up in their apartment for 2 years or work remotely at Google or something and make enough money to be okay. And it seems like that it just wasn't addressed as well as it should have been on the government end for the economic measures that they did restrict people of. And then the third story will be how crazy we became about vaccinations. I never thought that I would see anti-vaxxers rise again as much as they have, especially when that used to be only like a really weird hippie left-wing thing. But now I guess conservatives are in full swing with thinking that pharmaceutical companies are trying to poison you with Fauci's vaccines.
Savannah.
First off, I think that it's really funny how being anti-lockdown and anti-mandate, anti-forced vaccination is now being anti-vax, especially when this vaccination has no long-term research. Usually vaccinations have about 10 years of research behind them before they're released to the public. This was the most quickly developed vaccine in history. Again, young children dying from myocarditis from this. I have listened to these stories of multiple parents who have cried because their child is dead after getting the COVID vaccine.
No shot. I don't believe you. I'm sorry.
Great. Of course
again,
you don't believe
the
me
rates of
because you don't look
myocarditis.
into
The rates
any
of
that.
myocarditis.
Anyways,
are so
now it's my turn to talk,
low.
so I'm not
Okay,
letting
it's
you
always
speak
been your
right
turn
now.
to talk.
The story that's going to be told is that Donald Trump was a bad leader and that COVID got so out of control because of his bad leadership, and it got so much better under Biden, even though if you look at the natural progression of a virus and natural immunity, the reason why we are where we are today with the COVID rates is because everyone finally got it. Lockdowns were ridiculous, and any Republican as well or conservative who advocated for forced vaccination or lockdown, I think, is just not based in science in any way, shape, or form. So the story that's going to be written is that Donald Trump was a horrible leader. He's going to get a lot of the blame for that. And then, of course, Joe Biden came in and just really made everything great with vaccinations and face masks. So great job there.
Thank you. Louis.
I think we'll probably just get a couple of sentences, and that's about it. Nobody knew about the Spanish flu or cared even remotely until this. And then everyone was like, oh, there was the Spanish flu. So yeah, it'll probably be something like, in 2020, there was a pandemic, it swept the globe, this many people died. It was addressed with lockdowns, a vaccine was made quickly. And that will, I believe that will be it. That will be the sum total of our era. That's my thought.
Lauren.
More recent history, we're already seeing the shutting down of all these lockdown policies and mask policies as we speak, literally this week, the end of the airline mask policy. And I think a large part of that is because of Putin, obviously, stealing the limelight like such a diva, and COVID just doesn't exist anymore. And politicians are going to start to feel comfortable dropping these policies, knowing they aren't going to get this massive heat. And what the narrative will then become will be, oh, okay, we did it. We did it. All of these policies we put in place, they were successful. Although there's going to be trickling research that comes out saying, not so true. They'll just stick with that narrative. It was successful. We got through it. Now we can lift everything up. Then they'll let the rest of COVID run its course as it was anyways while all these policies were in place. And then later in the future, depending how far, I do think if we're going to honestly look back on it, no one had any idea what they were doing. Everything was all over the place. This is also why I don't even know if there can be a question of, oh, let's hold people accountable. Let's hold them. I think that there are a lot of politicians that genuinely wanted to do their best but had no idea. So they were listening to health experts, who some of which genuinely wanted to do their best but had no idea, going back and forth on policy, so much new research coming out. Then you had a lot of politicians just wanting to save face with the media, look good. We don't want numbers coming out before elections saying I killed grandma. But looking back on it, it'll be these people had no idea what they were doing. They were flip-flopping on policies back and forth. They seriously effed up a lot of people's lives by just trying to throw everything at the wall and flailing at it. And you know what? Now we're reaping the repercussions of this 2-year, 3-year economic disaster, education disaster, unfortunately. Could we have done it better? Probably, but we're humans, so we kind of suck at everything.
You know what's interesting is I was talking about the polio vaccine. You guys weren't, I was. The polio vaccine was tested on 1.8 million children, and then a year later it was declared effective. I wonder how we would have reacted if the COVID vaccine was tested on some 2 million children for a year. No placebo was given during the polio vaccine. How would we have reacted to 2 million children being tested upon by Pfizer, and then having the vaccine declared safe? I don't think we would have gone for it. And I wonder if perhaps our ancestors of the 20th century were a little more resilient than we are now.
Can we have a round of applause for our panelists, please? Thank you. We're going to open it up for questions. If you guys can line up at the mic here with Fritz.
Again, please, one question and no long-winded personal narratives.
This question is for Destiny. How long do you intend to or wish to have this mandates and for lockdowns and masks? Because we already got the vaccine. Enough people are getting vaccines. When is it going to end?
I think that the goal was always to control the flow of people into the hospital. I know that the conservative talking point is that Ukraine is the reason why we forgot about mandates, and now they're lifting mandates for whatever that story is. But I think what happened was, in the last surge that we had of Omicron, I think everybody knows somebody or multiple people that got sick. That was the first time that I even remember looking at my chat. People were saying that their offices had 20% of the employees were there, or half of college classrooms were just empty because of everybody getting sick. So I think that the combination of all of the people that had already gotten sick, all the vaccines that had already happened, and then the Omicron coming in and getting basically everybody else sick was probably going to be the natural ending point for the entire pandemic. So I mean, if the cases are down, which they seem like they are, then you can start lifting stuff and moving forward.
I'd just be interested in what any of you have to say about this. I guess the question is, when we say what should we do and what are policies, when should we lock down, what I don't think I'm hearing is the question, do we believe that the federal government has a moral or constitutional right to tell us when we can leave our houses, when we can cross state lines, and when we have to wear a certain article of clothing? I obviously don't believe the government has those rights under any circumstances, but I would be curious to know what everybody else thought.
Yeah, I don't think so at all either. I don't think the federal government has that right, and I think a lot of judges don't think the federal government has that right either, or state governments have that right. So that's pretty interesting.
I don't think some of those suggestions are always a bad idea in the face of certain things, you know, existential crises to your country, invasion, the government wanting to tell you to do things. But as I mentioned earlier, I think it should be such a threat that people will do them voluntarily. With government, you know, offering some sort of incentive, sure, but there should be a voluntary aspect of that because everyone agrees this is a threat to all of us.
Beer and hot dogs incentive.
Sorry, what?
They were giving out beer and hot dogs.
Yeah, beer and hot dogs, fat burger and fries for a vaccine.
Next question.
All right, so in 2020, during the lockdowns, during the thick of it, my father had a tumor growing in his neck, which got bigger and bigger, and he could not go to the hospital to get this looked at because the hospitals were refusing all care to anyone who was not a COVID patient to save those beds for this large influx of patients in cases that actually didn't show up. It wasn't until late June that he was able to finally get it looked at, get it diagnosed, get to surgery, all of that. And the doctor even told him that if he had waited just a little bit longer, he would not have made it. So it made me wonder how many other people did not have their cancers or other illnesses diagnosed during the thick of the lockdowns in 2020. And my question is for Stephen. Are you willing to acknowledge that lockdowns actually killed people from increased suicides, overdoses, mental illness, undiagnosed illnesses? I find it interesting that you're only willing to tout this 1 million people died from COVID number, but you won't acknowledge a single death outside of COVID caused by these lockdown policies. Are you willing to acknowledge that lockdowns actually killed people in some circumstances?
Yeah, of course. I don't know where this delusion comes from that like, oh, you only want to acknowledge one side of the problem when conservatives are the ones that do that. Like, you guys are the ones that have this problem where you'll talk about like the 2% increase in like domestic violence, and then when I show you like 1 million dead people from COVID, you're like, well, I think those numbers are fake. Those people were all fat anyway, right? So it's like, I mean, yeah, I'll acknowledge that there are costs to what we did for the lockdown. I don't think anybody would deny that. Okay, yeah.
You just did a but what about conservatives instead of just answering
Yeah, because that's where the conversation is.
I don't know a single conservative that says no one died from COVID.
She literally
just
said the numbers are fake.
She said the numbers were inflated, and they have been proven
How many
inflated.
people do you think died of COVID for real?
I told you, and I never said that the numbers were faked, so that in itself was
I don't think she's going to
false.
answer that question.
I said that I think that the numbers were over-reported.
What do you think the actual numbers are?
I don't know, but I don't think that...
Ballpark it?
I'm not going to give you an answer.
Okay,
I'm
that's
not
what I thought.
going
Okay,
to.
so this is what I'm talking about, right?
What do you want
This is
me
the
to
problem,
do?
okay?
You want
So-
me to
but
give you some answer and some statistics that you can use and like give me a gotcha with you. But when push comes to shove, and again, like the fact that you actually do trust the government so willingly is baffling to me, and I don't understand it. I don't think that the government would have given us realistic statistics about who did die. I think that it is overreported, and it was overreported to scare us into giving up our rights and freedoms, giving the government more power over our lives, which we willingly saw. I mean, look at
where did you get your numbers for increase of people in suicidality or mental illness?
So this is my thing, right? I'm a journalist, so I actually go out and talk to people on the streets of America.
So that your research is you went out and you talked to everybody.
Because I thought we didn't like interrupting people here.
You interrupted me so many times, but the reality is you like the data that you trust.
No.
And then you did. So then you're
I
telling me.
don't believe any data or
So you were able
statistics.
to ascertain the
so
mental health of the United States by going out and talking to people.
He's trying to put words in my mouth. He's
I'm not putting
letting
words in
me
your mouth. I
speak.
asked you a question.
I don't trust any data or statistics because I think that they are all manipulated no matter what we are talking about. It's very, very easy to manipulate a statistic or data. So when it comes to suicide rates, when it comes to the rates of myocarditis and pericarditis for the vaccine, I think that any statistic or data can be manipulated, like I just said. So whether it is a pro or anti-COVID argument, I don't believe the data.
Then how do you have any opinion on any of this at all?
Because I go out on the streets of America and I actually go talk to my fellow American who said my child killed themselves because of lockdown. Because I actually go and talk to the parents who said my child died from myocarditis. Because I've actually gone out on the streets of America and seen this with my own 2 eyes. I understand that data and statistics, of course, are important and they give us a basis for where we're at. But I also think that they can be very easily manipulated to push a government narrative. Look at the entire mainstream media, okay? Look who they are owned by. Look who they are funded by. For example, with COVID, we saw CNN, MSNBC, all of these people were sponsored by Big Pharma, push a specific narrative. Of course, every single piece of data and statistic is manipulated.
We have a nation of over.
interrupt just because we got a long line.
Okay.
I'm sure we can continue this with some of these questions anyway.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah, I apologize for introducing more data into the conversation, but
damn it.
But this is from the CDC websites, multiple different studies. I'm going to cite some data and then ask a question. And it's about masking children in schools. So in 2018, the flu killed 480 children during the flu season. 2020 to 2021, 19-month period, 361 children died of COVID. So we're talking about a longer period of time, fewer deaths in children. The cases are also the same, fewer cases, fewer hospitalization rates for COVID versus the flu. And then we have issues with cloth masks. A lot of kids going to school with like Star Wars masks they got on Etsy or whatever, and not really doing anything statistically. What are your thoughts on the government? Did they go too far in mandating students wearing masks or else they were sent home versus giving parents the option to keep their kids home if they're paranoid about that versus basically kicking kids out of schools if they don't want to comply?
There was a lot going on with that. And a lot of what was going on with that were teachers and teachers' unions making their determinations about what they felt comfortable with. So a lot of teachers' unions made demands that there would be masks on students, and that's a big part of the reason why they were in place at all. Was to get schools open, you had to get teachers to agree to come back to work. And to get teachers to agree to come back to work, you had to meet some of their concerns and address some of their fears as well. So that's why, I think that's why the masking was on children. Teachers wanted to wear masks. Kids mostly did not want to wear masks. There was something very interesting, though. I had a babysitter recently. She's a high school student, and I was asking her, it was right after the mask mandate was lifted for school children in New York. And I said, hey, is everyone done masking at your school? And she said, well, at first, as soon as the mask mandate was lifted, everyone came in with their faces free and they didn't wear masks. And a lot of girls started getting made fun of. Boys were like, oh, you have acne. And so the next day, a bunch of girls came to school with masks on and they haven't taken them off. And it was a self-consciousness thing. I don't think the government should have been mandating that necessarily. There are still schools, like I know the UN school, which is like $65,000 a year. They're still requiring masks. New York City public schools are not. But kids can wear them if they want to, which I think is reasonable. I will just say, though, there was recently a report in The Guardian. The CDC had a coding error, which led to an overcount of 72,000 COVID deaths. So that's what I was looking at before. And I think, that's 72,000 COVID deaths that were overreported. That's all. Thank you.
I just want to say I respect everybody on the stage greatly. I've seen you guys on multiple videos and appreciate that. I guess my question is for Destiny. Whenever you say that lockdowns work or mask mandates work, how did it go from 15 days to stop the spread to, in North Texas specifically, we did 6 weeks of lockdowns, which were very lenient compared to most other states, and then mask mandates for a year and a half. And to say that those worked, like that lockdowns, once you did lockdowns, that everything fell off the face of the earth, or excuse me, that there was a very decreased amount of cases. Why did we have to go through such a long, extended period of time if those were so effective?
I think there were two huge things at play. One is I think the virus is more infectious than people originally thought, so just doing some things wasn't going to cut it. And two, I think that in the United States especially, it seemed like in a lot of areas there were a lot of half measures kind of taken and going back and forth and back and forth. So we were in like the worst of both worlds, where people on the left were mad because they felt like the lockdowns weren't stringent enough. People on the right were mad because there were some lockdowns that were being enforced and it was enough to like shut down businesses and make everybody mad. So it seemed like in the United States, just because of our lack of lockdown approach, we had a really hard time committing to one effective strategy. So we kind of wound up with like the worst of both. We had a really infectious virus and like really half-assed measures that we took all across the United States to deal with it.
Wow, das war jetzt aber lang.
Question?
Yeah. So I just want to
2
ask,
Tage, wo sie auf Originalpreis
if the
war.
vaccine is so bad,
Einer, oder?
right, why did
Ich glaube
Trump
einer,
take the
gell?
vaccine?
glaube, du wolltest gestern kaufen.
Ja. Ich sag's dir. Ich glaube, die Vierer kommt raus und es geht nochmal runter. Ich glaube nicht, dass das viele machen, was du gerade machst. Das ist meine Theorie. Ja.
Gut, vom Preisverlauf her. War schon mal, was war so billiger? 40 Euro war es immer billiger. Laut meiner Anzeige. Wie das jetzt ist. Was halt komisch ist, die 4090 ist ja schon draußen. Warum ist die 4080 nicht rausgekommen?
Ich meine, da war was. Ich meine, ein Monat Unterschied oder so. Ja. Weil die haben ja alles stockpiled. Mein da. Bin nicht 100% sicher.
Ah, die ist halt unverschämt teuer.
Die 80er.
Die 4090.
Ja, ja. Das ist ja das, wo ich mich im Auto so aufgeregt habe, weißt du nicht mehr?
Ja, ja gut, aber du hast ja auch gekriegt, dass die UVP recht niedrig war und jetzt...
Ja, dass die
logisch.
genau, dass die generell niedrig ankündigt war und dann hoch.
Ja, genau. Ja, richtig krass, wie viel teurer es jetzt ist.
Das ist übel. Die haben fast den Preis verdoppelt oder so. Das ist absolut. Was kostet die gerade? Die 40? Bei der 4090 weiß ich es nicht genau, aber bei der 40.
450. 2500.
Die haben den Preis fast verdoppelt.
Kostet die 4090.
Die 80er?
Ja, die kriegst du ja noch nicht. Kannst du nicht kaufen. Die gibt's ja noch nirgends. Steht auf der Nvidia-Seite was? Ich glaube nicht.
Bevor den Resilience der GT 4080 listen die Händler
Serie. Eine Kaufoption. Ja, die 4080 ist noch nicht.
1600 ist die UVP.
4090? 1400, oder? 1469 Euro. Die 4080. Verfügbar ab 16.11. Steht bei Nvidia auf der Website. Bei der 4090.
Mal mehr.
Ja, 1150. Die 4090, wenn sie direkt beim Hersteller kaufst. Da steht ja nur diesen Standardkühler und wenn du das hier von irgendeinem anderen Hersteller kaufst, dann hast du meistens noch ein bisschen mehr Kühler drauf und ein bisschen overclockt.
Also, alle Kaufoptionen.
Okay, das ist krass. Die 3090 Ti kannst du bei Nvidia direkt für 1330 kaufen. Gerade.
Ja. Also die 90 ist bei 1900 jetzt gerade.
Ja, die 4090, ja.
Und die 80 hat bei mir keinen Preis noch.
Ja, genau, die gibt es noch nicht. Ja, da steht quasi, wenn du draufklickst bei der Website, Benachrichtigung erhalten. Nee, nicht, warte. Mehr erfahren. Kannst du draufklicken. Für 4080.
Ja.
Und da steht dann ab 1469 Euro. Ab 16.11. verfügbar.
Die Frage ist, wenn die 80er rauskommt, falle dann die Preise nochmal eigentlich nicht.
Oder 30,90, Mensch.
Ja.
Ich hätte jetzt auch gesagt, nein. Gut, die Nachfrage wird zwar sinken, aber wird halt auch nicht mehr hergestellt, also nicht mehr in der Masse hergestellt.
Mhm. 2.000 € für eine Grad.
Damals für meine 1070er, glaube ich. Damals gekostet. Das? Bei Amazon. Angaben zur Bestellung. Rechnung.
Problem ist, ich wollte halt eigentlich eine 4070. Was?
507. Hat
Ja.
die 1070 damals gekostet.
Das war schon.
Gut, die war damals neu. Die ist damals direkt rausgekommen.
Meinst du echt, dass die so viel. Meinst du, dass die so viel teurer wäre jedes Jahr? Meinst du, da sind so viel mehr Ingenieure dran und so? Ich glaube, die. Kannst du mir fast nicht vorstellen. Ich glaube, die schlagen jedes Jahr einfach drauf.
Ja, das auf jeden Fall. Die Herstellkosten werden nicht so viel mehr werden.
Nee, ich meine innovationsmäßig, also entwicklungstechnisch.
Gut, die werden in ihrer Entwicklungsabteilung nicht mehr Leute eingestellt haben, denke ich. Die haben halt einfach nur weitergearbeitet und haben halt das entwickelt. Und ich glaube, dass die da mehr Leute eingestellt haben.
Ja, dann kannst du doch eigentlich so einen Preis nicht rechtfertigen, oder?
Und ich denke, die Produktionskosten werden schon gestiegen sein. Die Rohstoffpreise sind gestiegen.
Meinst du, die haben Last Minute einfach den Preis erhöht? Das kann auch sein,
ja. Ja. Ja, aber ich weiß nicht, ob sie das Last Minute gemacht haben, aber. Ich meine
ja.
halt.
Die haben ja delayed, weißt du, deshalb sage ich das.
So, ja. Ja, das kann ja sein, dass sie gemerkt haben, oh shit. Wir hätten zwar den Preis aufrufen können, aber wir wissen nicht, wie es weitergeht, weil die Rohstoffpreise halt gestiegen sind. Deswegen machen sie gleich mal grundsätzlich ein wenig teurer. Machen sie dann halt entsprechend wieder billiger, wenn es sein muss. Also wenn sie merken.
Halt, das ist wahrscheinlich, erstens, dass sie so viel auf Lager noch hatte, weil so viele Crypto-Boys weggefallen sind. Und zweitens wusste sie nicht, was sie. Wir haben morgen Termin, Nino, um 13 Uhr. Wie viel der Erinnerung ist das jetzt?
Sagen, hä? Wissen doch.
Also es waren jetzt mindestens 2 E-Mails und 3 SMS.
Sehr schon, die wollen unbedingt, dass du vorbeikommst. Das ist die Frage.
Du willst bestellen.
Ja, ich will ja nicht. Wenn sie billiger wird, 200 €. Die 40,90 lohnt sich nicht.
Oh, aber im Dezember kommt die 70er noch raus, ne?
Kommt die 70er schon im Dezember raus? Wie das? Bei Nvidia.
Ja, PC Welt stand es gerade bei mir gerade.
Die Nvidia-Website ist ja gar nicht aufgelistet. 4070. Geht halt immer nur um die 90 und die 80.
Zum Weihnachtsgeschäft wollen sie sie bringen. Okay. Und die 4060 kommt erst 23 raus.
Ja gut, die
Ah, da muss doch auch was von Nvidia direkt geben. Ah.
Ich habe eigentlich auch gedacht, bei denen auf der Website könnte was stehen, aber da gibt irgendwie gar nichts dazu.
4070, GT40.
Ja.
Das ist die 30er-Reihe. Nee, das ist die 30er.
Also ich finde auch nicht mal einen Bericht zu der.
Leistungen, Raytracing, Reflex schaffen, technische Daten. Findest du diese Scroll-Webseite? Ich weiß nicht, ich komme mit denen nicht klar.
Wenn sie gut gemacht sind, ist ganz geil. Meistens haben sie halt irgendwelche Schwierigkeiten.
Ja, jetzt die zum Beispiel.
Bei Nvidia.
Ja.
Da geht sogar noch. Das ist. Der ist doch die schlimmere wie die. Oh, wann ist Black Friday? Black Friday ist 25. November erst. Ende vom Monat.
Was?
Black Friday.
Ja.
Frage ist, ob man das noch abwarten will. Ah.
Okay. Perfekt. Ich schließe alles. Nee.
Nee, war's.
Ich würde noch nicht. Ich würde auf Dezember warten. Ich warte auch.
Ja gut, der Black Friday hätte ich jetzt gesagt, auch nicht noch ab. Also den Monat.
Ja, wenn du auf Black Friday abwartest, kannst du auch noch Dezember abwarten.
Ja.
Was mir halt, jetzt gehen wir mal davon aus, die kommt mit 1500 Euro raus, ne? Die 80er, ne?
Ja.
Ist nicht unrealistisch und du bist halt schon bei einer Performance-Steigerung und hast nur 100 Euro mehr zahlt. Und du bist bei einer absolut disgusting Performance-Steigerung. Das ist halt so mein Problem. Ich finde den Preis noch echt unangemessen für die 90er. Ich finde den noch zu hoch.
1300.
Aber du bist bei 1500.
Aha. Das ist momentan das Beste, was du in Grafikkarte kriegst, wenn du nicht auf die 40er-Serie gehst. Die 3090 Ti.
Aber findest du den Preis nicht noch ein bisschen unangemessen dafür, dass eine neue Serie komplett raus ist?
Die 40er-Serie PCI Express 5.0.
Bin ehrlich, ich kenne den Unterschied zwischen denen gar nicht. Daten.
Das ist noch interessant. Die schon 5.0 unterstützen.
Nee, 4.
Auch noch 4. Ah. Das wäre cool. Das Mainboard, was ich gefunden habe, das hat schon PCI Express 5.0. Da geht dann noch irgendwer drüber, über die Schnittstelle, über die 4.0.
Ja.
Also 3090 hat bestimmt auch nicht.
Nee, 4.
Auch 4.
Ja.
Die 40, ne?
Ja, das ist für die komplette Serie.
Ja. Die haben nochmal größer, die 40er-Serie, wie die 30er.
Das ist das Meme.
Ja, ist höher oder auch länger? Das ist die Frage. Wenn die nochmal länger ist, dann passt die, glaube ich, nicht in mein Gehäuse rein. Das ich mir rausgesucht habe. Ja, die passt gerade so rein, die 3090 Ti.
Da gibt es bestimmt die YouTube-Video dazu im Vergleich. Nebeneinander stelle.
Ja,
Nvidia's
versus
RTX.
und dann die Size dazu, perfekt. You're gonna need a bigger case. Oh oh. Wenn ich reden höre, ich möchte nur einen Vergleich sehen.
The 4090 graphics card offers big improvements over the older 3090 and 3090 Ti. But is it worth trading your whole wallet for? I've compared all three GPUs in 25 games
Oh,
at
fuck.
4K,
Du bist gerade
1440
in
and
Medium
1080p resolutions to find out. All three of these graphics cards have 24 gigs of GDDR6X memory with a 384-bit bus. And the
Fuck.
memory speeds between the 3090 Ti and
Ist größer.
4090
Ist
are
aber nicht
basically the
länger.
same. The
Doch.
3090 Ti only has 2% more CUDA cores compared to the non-TI version.
Was für ein Gerät, was der da in der Hand hat. Timestamp hier. Video Urgerät erstellt. Einfügen.
land cool type of chassis.
Ah, hätte ich später machen sollen. Schraubt doch das Ding auf.
Great value with their cases and
Oh,
airflow.
das
So a
geht
lot of
sogar.
people will go with stuff like this.
Holy
I don't know how else to. I don't know how else to really translate this to you guys. I mean, to give you an idea, this is the other gargantuan Strix card, the 3090. You could do it.
Really?
I mean, this was kind of like the benchmark before. Like, can it fit?
Das ist ein bisschen ein Problem, würde ich sagen.
Well, no, not anymore. Your case size matters more now than ever.
Ja, mein Gehäuse ist schon größer wie das, was der da stehen hat.
Ich glaube, meins hat vorne zu viel drin.
Gut, muss halt wegen umbauen.
Aber da kommen irgendwann Slots, Nino, also so RAM, nicht RAM, HD-Karte-Slots und so.
Ach, die braucht keiner Mensch. Rausflexe. M2 SSD sind es. Kannst direkt aufs Mainboard klatschen.
Ich glaube, die passt da nicht rein. Okay.
Deswegen war ich gerade ein bisschen am Überlegen. Weil die 4070 wird nicht kleiner sein wie die 4080.
Nee. Vielleicht schmäler, aber nicht kürzer.
Nicht kürzer auf jeden Fall. Und dann ist halt wieder die 3090.
Alter, aus der letzten Auslieferungserinnerung ist mein Tesla in schwarz drauf. Der hat schwarze. Ei.
Das ist ja richtig die Wundertüte, das Ding. Keiner weiß, was du bekommst. No one will ever know. Also, I'm not sure. Nachdem ich dieses Video gesehen habe. Uff.
Jetzt habe ich so ausgehalten, ich warte auf die 70er.
Die 4070 oder was?
Ja. Ich will das sehen.
Kann man sogar. Ein Vergleich zwischen Eine 4090 und eine 3090 Ti. Uff.
Price and Specs.
Das ist halt ein bisschen ein Unterschied.
$900. Da sehe ich mich. Das.
Average 84 zu 121 FPS. Ich hab's auch gleich. Alter. Cyberpunk. 3090 packt Cyberpunk nicht mal auf 60 FPS.
Was?
Ja.
Das kann nicht sein.
Ah ja, gut, auf Highest Settings halt.
3090.
3090.
Ja.
Die 4090 hat 77. Average.
3090, das Spiel hat sie an ihre Grenze gebracht. Das weiß ich noch.
3090 Ti schafft das scheiß Spiel nicht, ey.
Ja.
Und das ist halt die beste Karte, die du bekommen hast.
Ja.
Bis vor ein paar Wochen.
As soon as possible, and not only that, recommended
Das
to
ist
take
das
the
einzige
vaccine.
Spiel, wo es
Also, why did Fox News mandate their employees to take the vaccine as well?
CSGO.
I would say that I was
Average
against Donald Trump's entire
484 FPS. Die ist sogar höher wie bei der 4090.
Das ist wahrscheinlich zu schnell, da siehst du zu viel.
Operation Warp Speed, and also do we
Ich habe auch komplett
seriously
unterfordert die
think that
Karte.
Joe Biden and Donald Trump are getting the same exact vaccine?
Aber
We are.
das
Come on,
heißt, ich
guys.
brauche eigentlich neue Bildschirme.
I
Ja.
don't think it's a question of the vaccine being
Du hast was Full
bad
HD
or
oder was?
not. It's when it comes to the vaccine
Ja, ich hab
mandate.
nur Full HD. Ja.
Ja gut, der spielt halt, oder der stellt halt das Spiel auch auf 8K da. Oder?
Also, wo ich arg auf 4K eingestellt hatte, bin ich runtergegangen auf 20 oder ein bisschen unter 20 FPS.
And who has to or who doesn't have to take
Ja,
it.
die Einstellung von dem
When
Spiel
you're
nicht nur
asking
eine
the pub-
Millisekunde. Ja, ist 4K, was der hat. 4K. Hab ich nicht. Ja, das kostet halt auch nochmal einiges.
Ja.
Wenn 4K anstatt Full HD oder ich habe ja WQHD eingestellt.
Ja, ich habe es nicht ganz verstanden, weil mein Bildschirm kann das eigentlich gar nicht. Aber ich habe einen Unterschied gesehen und die FPS sind absolut in den Keller gegangen. Also mit dem Unterschied sehe, vielleicht habe ich mir das auch einbildet, aber warum geht dann...
Darum geht's ja nicht.
Ja, aber dann dürfte die Frames auch nicht in den Keller gehen.
Ich rechne ja das Bild trotzdem. Ob sie das darstellen kann oder nicht.
Ah, richtig.
Egal, rechnen tut es ja trotzdem.
Wenn du jetzt überlegst, Ark war mal eins der anspruchsvollsten Spiele.
Ja, und jetzt kommt Cyberpunk. Und Cyberpunk zack, fick dich.
Ja, die ist doch, Ark ist doch schon von Battlegrounds vernichtet worden, oder nicht? Battlegrounds war doch auch ein riesen anspruchsvolles Spiel.
Ja.
For their health. There has to be a bit of trust there, and unfortunately,
Aber das
health
haben alle auf
officials
Low gespielt, gell,
lost
weil
that trust
die
very
Büsche dann
quickly.
irgendwie
You
durchsichtig
can
waren.
wear
So.
masks. Oh no,
Ja.
you shouldn't. You should.
Das ist halt der Witz.
1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, 2 years.
Das
Right,
ist halt
there
der
was just a
absolute Witz in der
complete lack of
ganzen
trust, and I
Geschichte.
don't think you
Ja,
can
ich
ask
würd-
people to take a
das hätte
vaccine
ich
that
direkt
was
unterbunden
created
als
so
Game-Entwickler.
quickly, as
Und
Savannah
einfach
pointed out.
Steine
Usually
darstellen.
10-year process to test a vaccine for long-term effects. That's a big
Wie
ask
willst du das
for
unterbinden?
someone whose trust you've already lost.
I kind of thought
Aber
that
einen
the Operation
soliden
Warp Speed was a really
Texturblock
cool idea.
dahinsetzen.
Ja.
They enlisted, what, like 6
Muss
companies
irgendwas
to make
geben.
3 different kinds of vaccine, 2 on each sort of, technique of making vaccines. I appreciated it. I thought it was a great way to handle it. And I think it's a shame that that the vaccines get so trashed now just because they aren't as effective as
Das ist
we
ja
all would
anscheinend
like.
ausverkauft, die
I
Karte.
think it was a really solid effort.
Perfekt. Ja, gerade mein Browser
Hi,
refreshed und
I
jetzt
have a
ist
question.
es weg.
Was?
Ach, fuck you. Ach, die 3090 Ti.
Ist nicht mehr im Angebot, oder was?
Ja, jetzt ist es komplett weg. Ich habe meinen Browser refreshed. Alter.
Ah, das sieht doch gut aus. 40, 70, 258, 285 Watt. So, da, das ist Afrika. Ich habe mich schon längst entschieden.
Gut, theoretisch können wir einfach die ganzen anderen Komponenten jetzt kaufen. Grafikkarte nachher nachträglich stecken.
Ja, muss halt ein Case aussuchen, wo du gut aussparen kannst, ja.
Müsst ihr jetzt quasi nochmal ein größeres Case suchen.
Also ich würde dir auf jeden Fall ein größeres Case empfehlen. In dem Fall. Dann machst du lieber flacheres oder so, da gibt es bestimmt auch schöne. Nicht ganz so hoch und machst es wegen länger.
Problem ist, die Länge an dem Tisch ist begrenzt.
Das habe ich mir gedacht, außer du hast andere.
Na gut, wenn, dann muss ich halt wieder auf diesen Big Tower gehen.
Das ist die richtige Einstellung.
Ich habe jetzt gerade das Mid Tower.
Ja, ich dachte eigentlich, ich habe einen Big Tower, aber irgendwie ist die Aufteilung, glaube ich.
Ja gut, das ist ja dieses alte Design mit den HDD-Plätzen noch.
Ja.
Das hast du bei den neuen Cases hast du das gar nicht mehr.
Wo hast du die dann?
Es gibt keine HDD-Plätze mehr.
Ja, wo kommt sie dann hin?
Es gibt keine HDDs mehr.
Okay, wo kommen dann die SSDs hin?
Irgendwo hinten an die Backplate vom
Ranzspatz! Gut, ist ja lang genug, ne? Was?
Da kannst du eine RGB-Beleuchtung nicht zur Geltung bringen an der Stelle.
Die haben keinen Platz mehr im Case.
Die werden hinter dem Mainboard angeschraubt.
Really? Okay.
Nein, keine Ahnung. Da würde ich ja dann anschrauben, weil es einfach keinen interessiert. Also immer noch ein Gehäuse, das eigentlich andersrum ist. Die haben alle dieses verfickte Sichtfenster auf der linken Seite quasi.
Ja.
Und ich finde einfach keins, was auf der rechten Seite hat.
Ich gehe halt davon aus, dass du einen Tower dann andersrum hinstellst, ne?
Ja, der Powerschal, der muss hinten in die Ecke. Praktisch. Shit.
Paying job at a company because they don't have the vaccine. Why should I be excluded from that if I'm a young and healthy dude?
I mean, I would have to know the company policy. If they have vaccine mandates, then I mean that's the company policy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about. I think that if they wanted to do the vaccine, well, I see that there's arguments against it. But like, I think having some sort of test for prior infections would have been nice, because if you were infected before, there is going to be some immunity conferred there. Same thing if you're vaccinated. I don't know why they didn't honor prior infections. So.
That is a super weird thing. I don't know. Yeah, that was frustrating all throughout, that natural immunity wasn't considered to be an issue. Like after I got COVID and then I got the monoclonal antibodies and I talked to my doctor about it, and he was like, you're pretty much solid now because you have natural immunity and all of this other stuff. You're good for a good long time. But if I were to say, you know, just have the natural immunity, then I wasn't going to be allowed to eat
Und einfach so ein
dinner
breiteres
out at a
Gehäuse
restaurant.
haben, das
I
nicht
think
ganz
the
so
worry was
tief
that if
ist.
you
Und dann die irgendwie so diagonal reinmachen, die Karte.
Nino, also ich bin kein Experte, aber ich glaube, das ist die schlechteste Lösung.
Das hätte doch bestimmt auch was, wenn das alles so wild da drin rumhängen würde.
Ich sehe schon, wie du das Ding auspackst, die Grafikkarte reinsetzt und sagst, das sieht aus wie Shit. Was ist das? Alles schief?
Bei den Be Quiet Gehäuse, da gefällt mir nur eine Sache nicht. Dieser scheiß Standfuß unten. Wer denkt sich denn diesen Abfuck eigentlich aus? Sieht so schäbig aus.
Was?
Das darf ich da nicht einfügen. Ja, Alter.
said that natural immunity was good, people would start having like, I don't know if you guys ever had like chicken pox parties growing up.
Den scheiß Fuß für den Case
and you all get sick so that you have the thing in your
Meiner hat so
that
einen
was the thing when I
ähnlichen.
was growing up. So
Es
people
geht
were
mir so auf
worried
den
about
Sack, ey. Es ist
encouraging
kein,
that type of
einfach nur
mentality.
unten viereckig ist. so schwierig.
In spring of 2020, I was going to the CDC
Ein
and
komischen
tracking,
Fuß da unten dran.
COVID stats and flu.
Oh, schönes Case.
Until
Ja,
April,
schon gut, aber
the flu stats
wenn
disappeared.
nicht dieser scheiß
The
Fuß
page
wäre.
even
Das ist das Einzige, was
disappeared.
mir im
Is
Case
it
stört.
possible that somewhere
Und das ist auch das
between 10
Große.
and 20%
Ja,
of
durchnehmen das.
COVID deaths were actually flu?
If you look at the
breit ist das
CDC data, there
Irgendwo ist
on
ein also wenn die
COVID
Bilder
deaths,
durchklickst, ist irgendwo
there's
was.
COVID deaths, and then
281.
there's also total
Wenn der Fuß nicht wäre,
respiratory
wäre es sogar noch ein
infection
schneller.
deaths. There's pneumonia deaths as well, and they're all separated out. I don't see flu on
Weil die immer
there,
so
but
gesagt haben.
they
Ich glaube, den
did
kannst du
do a
sogar
pretty good job,
wegmontieren.
I think,
Wenn
of
du
differentiating
gibt da ein Maß ohne
those areas anyway.
die
I
Füße.
don't know what you guys have to say about that.
Ist halt 500 hoch.
So, in regards to myo and pericarditis caused by the vaccine,
Yeah.
I think something along the lines of why should we
Aber
submit
bei
our
von der
children
Höhe,
to permanent heart
wie viel
damage was
meinst
said
du
on
grad?
the
Meinst
panel?
du grad
So, is it actually the case that myo and
44
pericarditis caused
Zentimeter.
by the vaccine is actually
Deshalb
chronic and
50
not acute?
Zentimeter Höhe.
No, it's an acute condition. It's just inflammation of the
Wie
either
viel
the
sind
heart or like the
540?
muscle surrounding the heart. It's not a chronic condition.
Hi, I'm a teacher
Das
here.
ist gar nicht so viel
in
größer,
Aurora,
meinst du
so
480
super
in der
local for
Tiefe.
me, but low-income
Ah.
neighborhoods were affected the most from the
Ich kann
lockdowns and the
das große
mandates.
Gehäuse nehmen.
Obviously, that makes sense because when
No
you have
problem.
consistent transportation
Silent
outside
Base
of the city and you
802.
have more access to different groups of people,
Das ist
as
geil.
well as parents at home who are educated and can read to you and read with you and even homeschool you. A
Silent
lot of parents
Base
decided to homeschool
802.
after the pandemic ended, I guess. They just had the advantage during the lockdowns, the higher income families. Now we're seeing
Unterschied zwischen den
babies
zwei?
and toddlers have horrible speech
mit
delays that
Fenster
are
oder
pretty
ohne
much
Fenster?
undeniable at this point. They're doing a lot more studies on
Das
it.
ohne Fenster
And
ist
we're
sogar
seeing
noch
at our
teurer.
schools a huge regression in behavior to the point where there's lots of assaults that are happening at our schools, from kids as young as 6 all
Oh,
the way
cool.
up to 11 years old at my school. Are there any solutions to this, do you think? And who's going to be blamed for this in the next 10 to 20 years?
Kann man das sogar, also so wie das aussieht
I
auf
don't
dem
know what
einen
the
Bild,
solutions are. I can't
Da wo es so
imagine that the
auseinandergebaut
school
ist.
stuff was written by anybody with kids. I
Da
don't
ist
know how
sogar
you could ever
vielleicht
imagine sticking
möglich,
a third grader in front of an iPad for 8 hours, and that would be like
ganze
the same
Dinge
as
zu
going to
tauschen,
school.
dass die Scheibe auf der anderen
The
Seite ist.
education stuff was really bad
Bei
on
manchen
two
ging das
fronts.
früher.
One
Ja.
was the lack of education that happened because kids weren't caught up when they were doing these 1 to 2 years of distance learning. It just doesn't work with children. That's one big thing. And then a second big thing that you rightly point out is economically, for a lot of people, you're like saving grace is when your kid gets old enough to go to school so that you have another parent freed up to go and work. And babysitting and daycare, that stuff is really
Yeah.
expensive. And when you've pulled a lot of people out of jobs, when you've got people staying at home watching their children, it's setting people behind economically, and then, like you said, behaviorally and educationally as well. I think the school stuff, which I think, I don't know how much it was probably differed from state to state, but I think the school stuff was probably the worst that we did during the pandemic.
Ich würde
I
sagen,
could
es
be
ist
wrong,
klein
but I
mit
feel
der
like even
Mercedes.
early on, I thought that
Ja, nicht
Fauci
überall,
was
es
saying
ist
that, like, this is
breiter.
probably not something that needs to stay because it was so disastrous
Mhm.
across the United States for families and children.
You don't.
Oh, I think that, probably
Der war
what's
10
needed is
Zentimeter
an
breiter, das ist
increase
nicht gerade
in special ed teachers, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and that maybe we
Oh, was
should
zwei-
do a bunch
281
of funding for
war's, glaub ich.
IEPs and to get
539.
kids specialized instruction. I know that that's
Ja, das
certainly
ist
something
tiefer.
that's helped kids in our district, is having that extra instruction. One thing that's been a shame though is we had like catch-ups, like there's been after-school programs and before-school programs for catch-ups. And
Gereicht
I
für
really wanted
Radiator
these
bis
for specifically for academics, for math, for
408
science, to just, you know,
420
get that
Millimeter.
all back on track.
Leck mich
And I
am
got a
Arsch.
call from my son's school. They said, oh, he's eligible to come in for this program.
120
And there was
Millimeter.
the academic, and it was like a before school thing. And I said, oh, great, is this math? What are we doing? You know, what's the catch up?
Ja, da auch
And
eine
they said,
Bock.
no, it's for
Muss man
social
sagen.
emotional learning. And I was like, no, I want academic catch up. Socially, he's fine. Emotionally, he's great. You know, these are not issues we're having, but we could use some help with fractions. Do you have anything for that? And the answer was not really.
Also ein
So
Zentimeter
I think
wird's
that,
überstehen.
The
Ich
emphasis
weiß nicht.
in education across the board needs to be
Nach
back
vorne,
on
oder was?
academics instead of constantly,
Oder
this
du
is
musst ein
my
neues Brett
parental
hinmachen.
position, you know, I'm not a teacher, but needs to
Was
be a
da
lot more
steht.
back on rigor, and academic value and holding kids to high academic
Oder
standards.
umschrauben,
I think
dass man
that
hinter ein
kids
bisschen mehr
really
Platz
achieve when
lässt.
they are held to high expectations and they know what the goals are and are
Dann
given the
steht's halt
tools to reach
hinterüber.
them, and then they feel good and then they go on and they can succeed.
Wo du kannst,
But we're
wenn du den
pandering
Fuß
to these
wegmachst.
kids, and I think that that's we're like, oh, you're so far behind. Let's
Dann
have a
kannst,
hug.
also
And it's
wenn du den
like,
wegmachen
no,
kannst,
no,
bei der Höhe
let's
gibt es
just
ja
work on
zwei
the
Maße, was
fractions.
wie Wunder.
Genau, du kannst den wegmachen, die
You
geben
asked
zwei
who's going
Maße.
to be held accountable
Problem ist,
for
du hast nach
this, and I
unten hin,
think
glaube ich, Luft
100% without a
beziehungsweise
doubt on this front, at least
Luftauslass.
with education, the
Echt?
media.
Wenn sie halt dann auf den
Because it
Boden
wasn't
stellt,
the
ich glaube nicht so
science, it
geil.
wasn't Fauci, even
Ja gut, aber
Stephen
steht ja auch
admitted
nicht am
that much.
Boden, von daher.
Everyone kind of
Aber
agrees
steht
to
halt
the
auf dem
extent
Holz
that
drauf.
is looking at the data anyways.
Ja,
Kids were
trotzdem
not being
dicht unten.
affected by this. They were pretty
Ja, und das
okay.
sind Lüftungsschlitze.
So you look at where is this coming from, and a lot of people
Dann
look
brauchst du
at
wahrscheinlich auch den Abstand
right-wingers
unten.
and say, oh, look at these
Meiner
crazy
hängt ja quasi
QAnon
oben,
jumping up
genau
and
hier
down,
oben
freaking
festgemacht
out
am
about
Tisch.
vaccines. But you got the
Also nach unten
left-wing
ja eh
version
komplett
of
offen.
people putting masks on their
Bei dir ist
newborns,
egal, ja.
people
Bei mir war's
needing
wurscht.
to keep their kids indoors, not
Aber du
leaving
hast
their house to
oben
even go
auch
to the
offen, gell?
park for years.
Oh ja.
And that's a
Ich
hysteria
habe da
that
quasi wegen was
absolutely is
unterlegt.
caused
Also
by the media.
da ist
There's
an einer
no
Stelle
doubt
sind
that
zwei,
fears about
zwei
this
so Stellen
virus,
sind
especially
Holzklötze
towards
und
young
dazwischen
people
ist
and
alles frei
children,
drüber.
were massively overhyped by the media to the point that politicians
Aber
were
das wird dann
making
anders
decisions
festgemacht
about
werden,
children's lives and their
es ist
schooling
deutlich
that was
breiter, fast
counter
10
to the
Zentimeter breiter.
data they oh so worshipped.
Eine neue Aufnahme
So
oben.
yeah, I think it's going to be the media.
Final question.
I find it concerning how the legacy media has hijacked the word conspiracy, and I feel we should nip this in the bud if we were to have better discourses from here on out. As far as I'm aware, conspiracy means a small group of people who
Aber ich glaube, du kannst da ist ein Bild dabei, wo du so eine 3D-Ansicht hast. Und da siehst du die zwei Dinger, die zwei Seiten abgeschraubt. Ich glaube, du kannst das wechseln.
Wuhan lab theory is true.
Ja, das habe ich
If
auch gesehen.
China's
deswegen
government has let out the
müsstest halt
virus
diese
out on
Blade,
purpose,
wo du
but
dein
it's-
Mainboard
that turns out to be
festschraubst, musst
true,
halt auf
it's
die
still
andere Seite
conspiracy.
montieren können. Okay.
I mean, there's two definitions for
Wenn du
conspiracy.
so
One
anguckst,
is, as you
könnten da
pointed out,
sogar
conspiracy
extra
is
diese
like a
Schlitze
plot
da
by
an
a
der
group of
Seite zum
people to
Reinhängen von
usually
der
permanently
Rückwand vom
go back.
Mainboard
When people
sein.
talk about a conspiracy theory, usually the implication is there's like there's like a group of people that are secretly, covertly doing something that there's no evidence for. That's why we went. So I think when people say like conspiracy theory, it's usually used as like a slur or like derogatorily, but it doesn't
Das
actually
Geräusch sieht
refer
halt schon
to
nice aus,
like
muss
an
man
actual
sagen.
conspiracy. Like criminal conspiracies exist. So if China did conspire to do that, that would be like a conspiracy, but it
Oben,
wouldn't be
ich
like a
glaube ganz oben
conspiracy
hat er
theory, I
dann
guess.
Lüfter
Aber die
rein.
Einschiebefächer kannst du, glaube ich, nicht auf der anderen Seite reinmachen, oder?
Can we
Gut,
have a
wenn das
round
Ding
of
auf der anderen,
applause for
wenn
our
das
panelists,
andersrum
guys?
montieren kann. Das ist dann,
Take
wie
a
das
short
andersrum
break, and then we'll be back.
müsste ja quasi dann gespiegelt sein.
Genau, und das ist ja nicht.
Dann muss ich hier noch einen Kopf hinschrauben.
Alright, we're gonna have a 10-minute break.
Dann hänge ich hier an die Standfüße einfach am Tisch oben hin.
Before we start talking about how Jews are running everything, including the financial sector, and they're the ones to blame for all of society's ills, I've heard this line before, okay? I don't want to get to the chorus of this song. Let's just remember, okay, I'm sympathetic towards that idea, you know? Yeah.
But here's another interesting point about this. This was said to me one time and it stuck with me as a family member of mine. With Africans, how many times you've heard like a rapper or, you know, talk about
Ich glaube, ich fände das
we were
nicht so schlimm, wenn der
kings.
direkt auf dem Boden steht. Das ist schon okay.
That's incorrect.
Genau.
If we're Jew. If we're Jew, and since we are,
Kannst du ihn auf dein Brett
we weren't the
festschrauben.
kings. We were the slaves.
Kannst du durch die Baseplate Schrauben durchmachen von innen.
Africans have all
Meinst
said,
du
you listen to rap music and hear black people say,
Wer weiß?
we blood of the pharaohs.
Ja. Nicht groß
And
genug, wird umfallen.
if we are Jew, then we weren't. We were the people that Moses freed. And when we talk about, have you heard black people talk about 400 years of slavery? All right. That is and we're having this history lesson, right?
Okay.
History doesn't matter. You're exploring ancient
Auf dem einen Bild
history,
ist andersrum montiert,
drawing deep
Johannes.
wisdom
Habe ich auch
from
gerade
it.
überlegt.
At the same time saying we need
Doch.
to forget all
Aber
of
ich bin nicht sicher.
it. Need to put that
Aber da ist ja die
behind us.
CPU unten und die Grafikkarten oben.
We need to forget it.
Giga Chad! Kanye's like.
Gut, das wird Sinn machen.
Auf dem zweiten, Nee,
I
warte.
use actually
Bild
Paralogics.
11 von
I
13.
can be inconsistent. So let me finish.
Das ist doch alles
Thank
andersrum
you.
montiert, oder?
And we need to move forward.
Wie soll ich das
so
finden, ist
much
die
wisdom
Frage.
to draw from
Ja,
history.
wenn,
Even the 20th
hey, hast du die
century.
Bilder offen von dem
Look at
Gehäuse?
this. Communism.
11 von
Without
ganz
the
rechts
lessons of
unten steht
history
11
of the
von
20th
13.
century, communism sounds
mir.
like a great idea.
Also 13
Except
Bilder und am
some of the
11.
worst atrocities
Exakt nicht
conducted by
andersrum.
Stalin and Mao that killed
Oh, da, ja.
50, 100 plus million people. Not just killed, tortured, starvation.
Ja.
Where people,
Kannst du es
cannibals,
andersrum
they ate
montieren?
each other. They ate their children. There's just dark.
Weil dem Bild davor
People should read some books on this.
sind quasi die
Holodomor. In the 1930s.
Grafikkartenslots unten.
With that lesson, we would,
Also im
and
Bild
now it's
10.
becoming more
Ja.
popular.
I'm not-
Marxism
11.
and communism
Das ist so,
don't
die am
disagree
Backplane
that
dreht.
happen.
Ja.
We're disagreeing.
Das Ding andersrum reinschrauben.
We need to harp
Oh,
on
cool.
the things that happen because the
Das ist
truth
richtig
is,
cool.
I'm given a fact. 50%
Be Quiet ist schon seit
today-
Jahren richtig stark, gell?
Vor allem diese scheiß Gehäuse ist ja das Silent Base Gehäuse. Du hörst einfach fast gar nichts mehr von dem PC.
Denn ihre Lüfter waren auch. Ich glaube, ich hatte noch nie andere Lüfter.
Ja, die sind halt nicht ganz so fancy unterwegs, also du kriegst das RGB-Shit dann nicht so arg.
Ja.
Aber. Gibt, glaube ich, zwar die RGB-Lüfter-Shit, aber die sind nicht so krass wie die ganzen anderen Hersteller, wo dann so dermaßen RGB sind. Wir haben nur außen, glaube ich, den Lichtring außenrum. Anguck. Lightwings. Ja. Ja, auch ziemlich fancy aussehen, die Lüfter. Mit diesem Lichtring.
Ja, aber wo ist da die zweite? Bei Bild 11, wo ist da der zweite Lüfter? Da fehlt doch ein Lüfter.
Bild 11. Hinten ist einer und vorne ist einer vor der Grafikkarte. Vor der HDD. In der Front.
Ja, aber hinten müsste doch zwei sein. Oh nee, das ist vorne, wo zwei sind. Okay.
Vorne sind zwei. Hinten einer und dann kannst du quasi deinen CPU-Lüfter kannst dann quasi oben montieren. Der quasi unterm Cover oben ist. Wie man im Bild 10 ganz gut sieht. Ja, da aufgeräumt. Dann kannst du sogar einen 420 mm Lüfter nehmen, Johannes. Oder so ein. Die gibt es auch von denen, die sind.
Kleiner oder was meinst du? Für CPU?
Nee, für CPU. Ja, ich hätte diesen kleinen mit den Schläuchen genommen und dann den 3 Lüftern, dass du quasi die 3 Lüfter oben rein machst und dann nur diesen Adapter für CPU hast.
Ach so, du hättest den hinteren Austausch für die CPU Wasserkühlung.
Ja, genau.
Dann sieht's richtig aufgeräumt aus, gell? Nur mal so.
Ja.
Ja, in Bild 10 hast du. Oder?
Nein, aber im Bild 10 siehst du, dass quasi oben deine Lüfter von der CPU mit diesen Wasserverbindungen runtergeführt.
Schön durchdachtes Gehäuse.
Okay. Kannst du diese verfickten Lüfter? Wait. Integrierter SSD kaufen? Nee, I don't know. Verstehe ich jetzt nicht so richtig. Da ist dann quasi in deinem Lüfter irgendwie noch eine SSD verbaut. What the fuck? Ja, das ist ein ganz geiles Bild. Da. Ja, klick mal, muss mal Da ist eine Ansicht mit den Komponenten, also wo das quasi im Gehäuse verbaut ist.
Ja.
Das ist quasi oben, hast du den Lüfter drin verbaut.
Ja.
Und dann hast du halt quasi komplett cleanes Ding.
Ja. Warum hat die Schläuche nicht hinterrum gehen lassen?
Ja gut. Kommt drauf an, wie lang sie halt sind, ob das reicht, dass du die quasi nach hinten hinter das Backplate führst und dann.
Nee, das geht nicht. Ich meine, andersrum einfach nur drehe, dass er nach links die Schläuche führt und die Lüfter ober andersrum einbaut.
Das wäre bestimmt gegangen, ja.
Immer doch die SSD nicht. Wo ist die SSD?
Hast du da vorne die Schubfächer, wo du da einsetzen kannst?
Hm.
Da wo quasi eine HDD.
Ja, da sind sie auch.
Und wenn du halt keine hast, brauchst du die Schubfächer nicht einsetzen, dann ist halt alles schön aufgeräumt. Ja, auf dem umgedrehten Bild siehst du ganz gut.
Say you don't call black people
Bild
Jew,
11.
right? Black people's deaths today is abortion today, right now. Like that, it's not racism. That's too wide of a term. It's genocide and population control that black people are in today in America that is promoted by the music and the media that black people make that Jewish record labels get paid off of, or media companies. Record labels and media company also, so let's give it a wider.
You know, I agree with Martin Luther King. I have a dream too.
Martin Luther
that one
King
day
was-
you would not be judged by the color of your skin or your race, black or Jew, but by the content of your character. All the assholes that f you over in the music industry, fuck artists over in the music industry are individuals. They're not Jews. Can you
they are Jewish.
It doesn't. They're human with opportunities.
Oh man!
And they took those opportunities. I don't care if they're Jewish.
Do you feel
or
like I
Jew-
should release that pain and separate it?
Yes.
Nice.
Okay, so
Yes.
that-
Good. Nice.
So if you're saying I should release that pain and separate it, then I'm telling you, you should release your pain and separate it, and we could get to this, the list of how you are a being with engineering opportunities.
That's 100%. I see what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing. The pain, I'm gonna let it go. Engineering challenges, I get it. One of the problems you highlight is people get f***ed over in the music industry, and get f***ed over in the media, get f***ed over all over the place.
They created. There was a Jewish trainer that brought me to the hospital and put in press that I went to the hospital. I know friends that off of exhaustion, a Jewish doctor, they diagnosed
Why do you keep saying
me
Jewish?
because they were, right? Diagnosed me with bipolar disorder and shot me with medication and put me on medication, then put it in the press. And every time, even if I wore the wrong color hat that a nigger is not supposed to wear, right? Then they immediately say he's off of his shit, he's off his meds, he's off his rocker, and it's literally used as a scarlet letter control mechanism for the people. Understand the kids, the colleges, the high schools. What do you think they put me right now? They put me as the prophet, not the leader. It doesn't have to be the leader, right? Because we need a more intelligent person to be the leader, but at least, right?
Ja,
They put me as the
speichern wir uns
prophet.
das
They
mal.
put me as the only person that would say this. And I'm just saying that was 4 Jewish members that controlled my voice, because for the fact that 90% of black people in entertainment, from sports to music to acting, are in some way tied into Jewish business people, meaning that in some way, just like if Ram is sitting next to Obama or Jared sitting next to Trump, there's a Jewish person right there controlling the country, the Jewish people controlling that who gets the best video or not, controlling what the media says about
It's a
me.
person, not Jewish. Let me just say one thing.
But they are, though. That's the only thing. It just so happens that they are. It just so
You
happens that they are.
saying
That
that's
doesn't
a-
mean that I hate them.
Yes,
that
yes,
just
yes.
means that they are.
But it's a dog whistle. Two. Let me
Well,
just
it's not
say,
a dog
'cause
whistle,
I
Lex. It's a
would
full
love
on,
to
like,
add
he's saying what he's saying.
more love to the world. I would love you to do that as a person with a big voice, with a big, powerful voice that a lot of people look up to. And when you say Jewish media, it's funny how this world works that way. When you say Jewish media or Jews are controlling the voice of black artists, black people, black artists, when you say that,
Am I not allowed to say it out loud?
you can say it. There's a large number of people that are hurting and have anger and even have hate in their heart when they hear Jewish media. That hate starts being directed towards the Jewish people. Do you acknowledge that? Do you understand? Can you feel the hate in the world? That comes to the surface when you say stuff like that.
Oh, Johannes.
I feel that
Wir können
when
los.
we go into therapy,
Wie
my
machen
dad
wir's?
was a therapist, and obviously I've got some
Issues.
therapy skills myself. A lot of
okay,
people,
never
my
mind.
music
Okay.
is healing.
Sollte ich abhören.
Ja, schon am sinnvollsten erstmal. Gucken wir mal.
Außerdem fällt es mir gerade ein bisschen schwer, mein Auto loszulassen.
Den meinst du, möchtest du mit damit rumfahren?
Mhm.
Ja, gut, du hast ja noch. Kannst du weiter benutzen. So.
Unvernünftig.
Für deine Sonntagsausfahrten.
Das meine ich, das ist so unvernünftig.
Die Spritztoure.
Versuch's als Oldtimer anzumelden.
Ja, lässt noch ein paar Jahre stehen, dann geht es vielleicht.
Mhm.
Wenn es nicht weggerostet ist in der Zeit.
Ich ein bisschen was machen, sonst kann ich das nicht Jahrzehnte stehen lassen.
Dann müssen wir mal jetzt den Rost entfernen und dann gut
Und den Lack
konservieren.
wieder auffrischen, dass der Lack wieder gut ist.
Ja, wenn es dann nicht benutzt, dann könnte es passieren, dass es zum Oldtimer wird.
Ja.
Wenn es nicht wegrostet.
Alter, wer kauft weiße Case? Ja, der Ladislav.
Was?
Ich hab gerade das weiße Case. Das ist so übel.
Ja, ich finde es nicht schön. Also,
Mir gefällt es aber überhaupt nicht.
es ist schon ein bisschen schön, muss man sagen. Also, musst du ja
Das
komplett weiß
passt
machen.
nicht. Findest du, wenn das ganze Interieur wie bei dem, was du geschickt hast, wenn das schwarz ist, dann passt das Gehäuse nicht. Nee.
Achso, ja, du musst ja dann innen drin alles in weiß kaufen.
Ja.
Du musst ja dann Mainboard in weiß kaufen, du musst deine Grafikkarte in weiß nehmen.
Ich finde das fast schon wieder ein bisschen rassistisch, muss ich sagen. Ne? Also das,
Ja, rein rassistisch. Du kannst auch pink kaufen.
ja, aber es gibt bestimmt keine pinke Cases, ne?
Du musst halt selber folieren.
Oh, das wäre auch mal hot.
Einen pinken PC.
Ja.
Pinken Case.
Oh, da würde ich mich sogar sehen, ne?
Aber das ist halt ein bisschen schwierig. Weil diese ganzen Lüfter-Scheiße kannst du halt einfach so folieren.
Doch, muss man umfolieren, ne?
Ja, musst halt, hä? Wie willst du so ein Lochgitter folieren?
Das muss gehen. Ich sehe da keinen anderen Weg. Nee, das ist Streich.
Ja.
Ja. Rausbaustreich.
Ja, Sprühe halt.
Ja.
Dann geht's, ja. Ich sehe schon Johannes. I got a plan.
Alter, du hättest mich gestern sehen müssen, wo der sein Server-Rack aufgebaut hat. Es ist so appealing, ne? Aber es ist so viel Arbeit. Holy fuck. Es ist so unvernünftig, ne? So, ich zieh mich mal an.